In the previous video, I talked about what the arrow, the conditional in our logical language means. I now want to contrast that with if in English, what a conditional in natural language means. So let's look at some conditionals in English. So if I exercise this year, I will be fit. Yeah, that seems like that's true. Also, if I don't exercise this year, I won't be fit. That also seems like that's true. And if I don't exercise this year, I will be fit. That seems like it's false. Okay, so A and B seem true. C seems false. Now, let's think about B and C a little bit more, and in particular C. So, why does C seem false? Well, I need to exercise to get fit, or if I'm already fit, to stay fit. Yeah, right? No exercise, muscles aren't going to do as well. Cardiovascular system's not going to do as well. So, let's suppose that in fact I do exercise this year and that I will be fit this year, right? So let's suppose that I'm the conditionals A and B tell me what, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. If you do that, that's what's going to happen. They don't tell you what's actually going to happen. So let's suppose though that I do exercise and I will be fit this year. Okay, well that seems like that means that C is, well, it's false, right? C says if I don't exercise this year, I will be fit. We've already agreed that C is false. But note that it's false now, supposing that I do exercise and will be fit this year. It's a false conditional. Its antecedent is what? Is false, right? We said I am exercising, and so it's false that I don't exercise. So the antecedent of C is false. And what about the consequent? The consequent is true because we said I will be fit this year. So we've already agreed that C is false, and now we've observed, oh, it has a false antecedent and a true consequent. That's interesting. Okay, now let's try to symbolize C. Our sentence C. So we can say that X will symbolize I exercise this year, and W will symbolize I will be fit. And so that means that this sentence is symbolized as negation X arrow W, where negation X is the antecedent. Okay, good. So let's think about that. Negation X arrow W, well, that's actually very true, right? Why? Well, it's an arrow. It has a false antecedent. Well, what we saw in the previous video is with an arrow sentence, if you have a false antecedent, then you're true. It also has a true consequent, and we saw that if you're an arrow sentence with a true consequent, then you're true. So this conditional is very, very true. It's what we're looking at is it's the third row of the truth table, FT, and when we have an arrow where the antecedent is F and the consequent is T, then the arrow sentence is true. So C and D, while D is a symbolization of C, they have different truth values. D is clearly true because of what our truth table means, and we already what our truth table says, how it says the arrow works. There's no question about it. That's the truth table defines the arrow, and it tells us here's how it works. All you have to do is go to the third row of the truth table where the antecedent is false and the consequent is true, and the truth table just says yeah. The arrow's true on that row. There's no question about it. That's simply what the arrow means. But we also think that the English sentence is false. Okay? Now that doesn't mean the English sentence is bad. It doesn't because we the logical language is good and natural language is bad, and therefore we must think that the English sentence is bad. No, it just means they're saying two different things. There are there are ways in which a logical language is better. It's not ambiguous, but that doesn't mean it's better in every way, and it doesn't mean it. Can we say everything in English, or take all the things we can say in English? Can we say all of them in the logical language we have? In no way. We're only looking at part of English. So what this shows us is just that C and D, well, one is true and the other is false, and that means they mean different things, but their parts mean the same thing. Their parts mean I will be fit or I don't exercise this year. And so the only way in which C and D can be different is if and the arrow mean different things, and they do mean different things. So if then does not mean exactly the same thing as the arrow. What's going on is that the arrow is basically a simplification of if then. So maybe here's how English conditional works. Maybe when is an if then and a conditional true? Well, it's true in degrees, and it's true to the degree that the consequent is likely to be true, given that the antecedent is true. Maybe that's how it works. That's what there are people who are trying to understand what exactly conditionals mean in natural language, and this is a proposal that they've come up with. and it gets more sort of complicated, but this is the basic idea. Well, why then will we use the arrow symbol? Well, a way of putting that is to say that the arrow is a material conditional, meaning that it's a system in which if either the antecedent is false or the consequent is true, then the conditional is true. Well, the arrow is simple and it approximates if-then, and there are many more complex systems that are based on our system that try to get closer to how if-then works in English, and that's fine, but they're based on our system, and so we're learning this sort of simple system. And a lot of reasoning does use the arrow. It's used in mathematics, it's used with computers, it's used in parts of law, it's used in parts of the sciences. So it's important, and it does show up in English and other natural languages, but it's not the same thing. So there's times when maybe we use if-then to mean something like the arrow, but there are also times when we use if-then to mean something else. And so we want to be careful when we're thinking about how the arrow works in our system, and in particular in our derivation system, to remember that, oh, this is the arrow, it's not the if-then conditional. The arrow, you can get to the arrow from the consequent, and you can get to the arrow from the negation of the antecedent, which are things you cannot do in English. In English, you have to argue from the antecedent to the consequent to show that a conditional is true, and we don't have to do that in our system. So when you're doing a derivation, the goal is to box cancel. To box cancel by CD, all you need is the consequent of the conditional. It doesn't matter how you get the consequent. To box and cancel by ID, all you need is a contradiction, and you can always get a contradiction if you have the negation of the antecedent, because you can assume the antecedent, and there's your contradiction. So when doing, and then finally when doing truth table problems, you want to make sure that you have the arrow definition in front of you or have it very well memorized, because it's not intuitive. If you think of the arrow as meaning if-then, that can mislead you because it doesn't really mean the same thing. So those are some observations, some things we want to remember about how the arrow works, and that, the conditional in English is more complicated than that in many cases.